Yo everybody, welcome back to the channel. One of my favorite gaming franchises is the Resident Evil franchise. From gameplay to characters to the stunning graphics of the RE engine, Capcom has done a great job maintaining this franchise and making quality titles for it. It's about the only game that they've been doing that for, but we'll still take it. 5 years ago, almost six, Capcom released the Resident Evil 2 remake, a remake of my favorite title in the franchise. And I'm here to tell you that that remake is still the best remake and heck, the best game in the franchise. Let's talk about it. Before we get into the merits of this incredible game, I just want to give a brief overview of the other remakes so that you understand my headspace when I say that RE2 Remake is the best of all of them. For RE1, a lot of fans swear by it, and I'm not going to say it's a bad game. It's the definitive way to play the original Resident Evil, but compared to the other remakes we have, it's just a bit dated, and I need to play it more. But the Spencer Mansion, I just never got into a flow state with the map design. It's obviously something you have to do. You have to play the games, learn the layout, learn the puzzles, and then the game is more fun. I just never put in the energy to do that, so RE1 Remake wasn't that special for me personally. Resident Evil 3 Remake? Now I know, it's the punching bag of the Resident Evil community, and there are some good and some not good reasons for that, but overall, it's the weakest remake of all of them. It has cut content, and just as a general gaming experience, Capcom did not give as much love to it as the rest of the remakes, so unfortunately, it can't be the greatest. And then there's RE4, which most people would say is the best remake. And I'm not gonna lie to you, RE4 is completely stunning. It had an insurmountable task of remaking a timeless classic, and it did that while also giving the remake its own unique identity and having a great storyline with great characters. RE4 is fantastic. It just didn't really have the magic for me that RE2 did. Now that we've gone through all of the remakes, let's talk about RE2. In addition to it having all of the things that I liked about the original, I really like the decisions that Capcom made when changing this title. There are changes that returning players won't expect, and I'd say in more than less of the cases, those changes were welcome and it really made it a fresh experience to play through it, really making Resident Evil 2 Remake its own experience, not completely tied to the original. Of course, some of those decisions are better than others. We'll get into that in the next section. But overall, having the courage and the ability, the talent to take an already existing concept and title and making it different, but also paying respect to it, was a great balance that the team were able to come to with this remake. A huge boon that this title has is the characterization it's given to its classic characters. Leon, while he was a great character in the original Resident Evil 2, has become so much more in the Resident Evil 2 remake. This game feels like it was made with Resident Evil 4 in mind, because it creates a perfect contrast between his confidence and his trauma in Resident Evil 4 by establishing him as a bucky-eyed, good cop that slowly throughout the events of the game becomes traumatized and tightens up and becomes hardened from the experience of Raccoon City. Claire I love her character, and she's one of my favorite characters in the Resident Evil franchise, but I'm a little iffy on her interpretation in this game in isolation. She's fine, and there are certain elements of her character that I really do like. Her spunkiness can be great and not great at the same time depending on the scenario, and that iconic scene where she goes up to William Birkin and just says that she's got it, it's not exactly, I wasn't really in favor of it, but she also really doesn't embody the compassion and motherness of the character in all instances. It just doesn't feel as tight as it was in the original. But Claire is preserved in a great way, and one of the reasons why I was so excited for this title is to see Claire again. Claire is one of the most important characters in the Resident Evil franchise, and she barely gets any time to shine. So having a re-release of 2 gave her time to shine, and hopefully she'll be in a future release. She's a wonderful character. Now, I want to tell you about my most disappointed character of this title. And everyone has talked about it. Sphere Hunters talked about it. Boulder Punches talked about it. And it's for good reason. Brian Irons is a pretty mid character in Resident Evil 2 Remake, especially in comparison to his original form. Because it was very subtle and a very layered performance. Obviously, you could tell that in Original 2 there was something wrong with this guy, but he at least tried to have the facade, the mask of the charismatic mayor that was working with Umbrella behind the scenes and defending their actions. In Resident Evil 2, he's just an outward maniac. He has no layer to him, he is insufferable, he's just evil, but not in like a layered, charismatic way. He's just not entertaining. He's also kind of a buffoon, kind of a clown. You don't really take him seriously. The only reason why he's a threat is because he had the advantage and pulled the gun on Claire. But in every other, he literally gets to play tag with a child and can't get the child. He's really not a villain to be taken seriously, even though he's meant to be intimidating. Overall, Brian Irons was a very disappointing character. Ben, the reporter in Leon's campaign, I don't know how to feel about. He feels like he would have been a more layered character, but he dies so quickly that you don't really get the opportunity to get to know him at all. You can read his records, and it's clear that he's more likable than the original portrayal. And I'll just say, Ben in the original release was not a great character, not very layered at all, and I didn't really feel bad when he died because he was just insufferable the entire time. But the new remake version has that potential, and he was clearly a character that was trying to blow the whistle on all of the things that Umbrella was doing but got caught up. We just don't get to get enough of it. He's literally alive for a minute and then he dies. So I feel like he should have gotten more screen time. When you return to the prison cell and you have to break out of the prison, I think that would have been a perfect time for him to die, because you would have gotten a full scene of him. You could probably interact with him while he's in the jail cell, and when you break him out and you're just about to save him, he could die and you would have had the time to leave an impact on the players. Ada is interesting. I think both portrayals are actually even in this regard. She is a lot more outwardly suspicious in Resident Evil 2 Remake, and the trench coat, sunglasses look. I understand the idea was to make her more incognito, but the way they did it was just not executed well. Honestly, you could just have her wear the dress and it wouldn't really make a difference. But I really like her characterization. She's very confident. She's standoffish, but she develops over time with Leon, and I think she is actually more charismatic than the original. The original, she's fine, but it's so strange because it doesn't feel like the facade and the character she's playing and the real character she is are properly differentiated. It feels like they're both existing at the same time, whereas you can see the seeds planted. The way she acts in Remake, you know clearly what's the lie and what isn't, and you can see the game she's playing, whereas in 2, I don't think they really knew the whole story behind her or when she was lying or not. Either way, she just got a clearer direction in Remake, so I would say that that's definitely improvement. Oh, we gotta talk about Mr. X. Mr. X is a menace. He is so good in this game, and the first time I played Resident Evil 2 Remake, I was afraid to play the game because of how scary he was. When I learned that you could run away in like the locations where he can't access, it's really helped. But when I first played the game, I wasn't good, so there would still be zombies around in the RPD, and this guy would just be here. And when you got a room where you got a zombie, even if they're grounded, and you got Mr. X, it's just a horrifying situation. So Mr. X is an absolute win. Last character I think we really need to talk about is Sherry Birkin. We can also talk about Annette as well. They're they are what they are. I wouldn't say Sherry is portrayed any better or worse than the original. She serves the purpose she serves. Annette is probably worse. I think she's generally viewed to be worse by the community, and it makes sense. She's just a bit strange. I get they were going for like the aloof science type, but it just it doesn't sell me on the likability of the character. In the original, she was that weird science type, but she also was very caring for her family. So when she died and her last thoughts were about her daughter, it was a very impactful and a great like culmination for this character. You may not even feel sympathy for her then, but it makes you feel something. Whereas when what happened in Remake happened, I wasn't really emotionally impacted. The character kind of just served the purpose they were supposed to serve. Oh, we gotta talk about Marvin. Last character to talk about is Marvin, and his portrayal in Remake is stunning. The way it connects to RE3 Remake is great, and Marvin is one of the more impactful characters in RE2. It's unfortunate we'll never see him again, but they made him serve a great role, and his interaction with Leon before Leon goes down into the RPD's stronghold, like the lower area, it really feels like that character had an impact on the character and the audience. Overall, the story was a great addition to RE2 Remake, and I really enjoyed it. But what makes this game special for me is really the gameplay experience. It is a horror game that is focusing on managing your resources, but they've added layers to the gameplay experience that make strategy king here and make it so brute forcing the game is not the way to go. With the limb system, you have a dynamic system that gives you multiple ways to deal with every combat scenario. For me, I generally do try to prioritize critical headshots, whether that's the faster way or not. It's the route that I like to go, and it feels really good when you get on a streak. But going for a leg and then using knives to secure kills is also an exceptional way, and trying to find that balance depending on where your run goes, because of the RNG, it's dynamic and you never really know exactly how your gameplay experience is going to be. It really adds a lot to the game that these systems are in place, because I really just like to do runs of Resident Evil 2, and every time it's a fresh and new experience. A design philosophy the developers made clear after beating the game is that this game is not the longest, but a first playthrough can still get you about 10 hours, but the importance is on replayability and mastery. This game can be 10 hours, right? I played nearly 170 hours of it, and because the game is, I want to say a moderate length, I don't want to say short, it's the perfect length. Because if I'm ever bored and I have a few hours, I'll just go and do a run for fun, and I think it's perfect. That's one flaw that I actually felt with Resident Evil 4 and why I wouldn't put it as high. Resident Evil 2 being around 2 hours is the perfect length where if I die and I lose a run, it doesn't feel that bad. It obviously stings, but I could jump back in and I won't feel like I wasted my time. If I lose progress in a Resident Evil 4 run, a 4-hour run, it's just way too much content for me to commit to. I feel like they really struck gold with the length in 2, and the replayability is a great element because it encourages mastery, and when you go from someone struggling to clear the game on standard to zipping through it on hardcore, that progression is just incredible. I can't talk about the gameplay of Resident Evil 2 without emphasizing how intricately they developed the itemization in the game. If you know where all the pickups are in this game, you just fly through the run, and every item, every gunpowder, every board that you can board up the windows with, every item feels meticulous. Like you have the perfect amount of resources to get through an encounter, the way you can get through it, and still feel like you don't have enough resources to like get through the game unscathed, but just enough to where you're empowered, but also having the tools you need to get through a gameplay segment comfortably, because knowing every pickup is important. There's an area in the RPD where you go through a hall that has zombies that you cannot avoid without a flash grenade. What do you get the room before that? A flash grenade. There are so many moments where, because of how well it's designed for replayability, where you go into a room that gives you an item that you keep in your inventory that makes the next section easier. And that just gives this game a flow that I haven't really felt in really any other game. Its pacing and its itemization is just on a completely different level. All these reasons are just a small little dip in what makes RE2 Remake so special. And I still play it, even though I've S plus every campaign. I still play it to this day and still try to get my times down because the game is just so much fun to play. It's not even about getting a record or anything. The game is just so fun to play. I can't not play it, and it is my favorite Resident Evil game to this day. And hey, anyone else out there, hopefully Resident Evil Code Veronica gets a remake, because that game, then there will be competition for my favorite, because Code Veronica, it's up there and it's exceptional. If you got this far into the video, I greatly appreciate you, and hey, if you like this content, subscribe. It's great having you here, and I wouldn't want you to miss any of the next videos coming up. But we'll settle that in the next one. Poyo yo, everybody. It was great having you.